can't get any words. Podcast on blast, giving you the real talk, no holding back. Can't get any worse, we'll make you see. There's always a silver lining. We'll set you free, so join the movement. Let's change the game with the Can't Get Any Worse podcast.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Can't Get Any Worse podcast. Fucking ripping and tearing this week. What a week we're ripping into this week. It's all happening. We got the again, we'll touch on it in more detail further into the episode. But we got the split bill show finally here this week. So it's actually going to be on Tuesday, the day you guys are listening to this. So hopefully I'll see a couple of you there. If I've done any legwork with marketing and shit like that, which is probably what we'll rip straight into. But I'll just touch on what else is going on. So got that one Tuesday, and then, emceeing. I'm basically doing my fucking plugs at the end of the show. So let's save it. Let's store it up, all right, for the end. We're going to do that. Let's focus on the big one. The split bill show, the Goodchat Comedy Fringe Festival. Doing a show up there with the two boys that came in, 2 weeks ago now? Reed and Cody. So we're ready to go. We're ripping and tearing. We've got, I don't know. I don't want to speak for them. So if you come and watch and they bomb, not on me. I can only worry about myself. But we've tweaked the format a little bit more. Reed and I are doing a bit longer now, which is, I don't know if it's, I suppose it's scary. It's probably going to be the longest set I've done. Actually, it'll probably be on par with my Roma set last week. So Reed and I are both aiming for around the 18-minute mark. And Cody's going to open with 15 minutes. And, we'll see how we go, eh? I don't know how it's going to go. Fucking nerve-wracking. I'll put it that way, right? So, obviously, something I've dabbled in a little bit just with, like, running my own shows and shit is the whole marketing side of things. And I don't know, I try and avoid the whole, and it is like 100% something that I should get into because it's probably like the top of the game at the moment with marketing is just all your Facebook ads and your Instagram ads and all that sort of shit, just social media ads, right? But I think I'm pretty old school in my approach to trying to sell shows and shit and just reaching out to people face to face. I like Facebook groups and shit. I post in there a little bit, just like community groups, or if there's a group with some common interests and things like that, I'll throw it up in there. And that seems to work pretty well for me, like personally so far. So I did a bit of that this week. And the boys are doing all their little marketing tactics that they're wanting to try. Some of Reed's memes that he's been putting up are a little bit questionable, but it is what it is. The show's called Too Far for a fucking reason. So, it is what it is. We're going to push those limits, push those boundaries, and that's what people are coming to fucking pay the price of admission to see. But when was it? Wednesday or Thursday, it must have been. The other boys got some flyers printed and they went and handed them out in their like local communities and shit. And I was like, well, fucking, I'm in Logan, right? And for those that aren't in my general vicinity, vicinity, that's about 45 minutes out of the city where the show is going to be, right? So I was like, there's almost no point plugging it around here. Like nobody is going to drive up there on a Tuesday night and watch a stand-up show. So I made the call, run it past the boys. I'm like, should I head up there on Wednesday or Thursday last week with my pile of flyers? Had about 100 flyers to hand out. And I go, I'll just go up and down Caxton Street a couple of times. That's where the show is, at Goodchat Comedy Club on Caxton Street. And so I did it. I set out there, started the journey, and fuck me, I did not realise how long Caxton Street is. I think I went up and back twice, which definitely got my steps in for the day. I did still come home and walk the dog, so fucking old jacked boy over here. I'm getting fucking shredded for stereo. That used to be a cool thing back in the day for any festival goers that might listen that were into your early 2010 festivals. Oh, but look, there's something about plugging comedy online, right? On Facebook groups or whatever it is, where you're hidden behind your display picture, right? So it's still, I don't know if any other comedians listening feel this way as well, but it's a pretty awkward thing to try and plug stand-up comedy, right? Because I feel like a musician can be like, come watch me play. And even if they're half good at guitar and have a half decent voice, it's going to be a fun show, right? But comedy is like so weird to plug. And 95% of people that do comedy are just like socially anxious, depressed, fucking weird people, right? Like where there's weird bunch of people that for whatever reason, our one thing that we want to do in life, as much as we hate being around people, is get in front of a random group of strangers and just confess our deepest secrets and shit like that and hope that there is some sort of like positive reception from the crowd. So it's an insane thing to try and plug, right? Like come and listen to my perfectly worded poetry about my small penis. Yeah, it's a fucked up thing to try and plug. But so I started pounding the pavement up there, and look, I've done this once before back in the day when I was trying to like sell my first show. And it takes you about 5, for me personally, right? About 5 rejections before you start to go, all right, this is what it is. I'm going to get rejected more times than I can get accepted. Is that the opposite to rejected? I would assume so. I don't fucking know. Carry on. And yeah, I cop some negative, not negative, just people not interested to hear what the fuck I have to say, right? And fair enough. Like they're trying to get on with their day and I'm trying to hand them a stupid piece of paper. And I'll be the first to admit, anytime I get handed a piece of paper, that thing's going straight in the fucking bin. So, yeah, there are a couple times where I gave people like flyers and I'd look over my shoulder to make sure they didn't bin them. But fuck me, I was like, hey, like random dude was walking down. I'm like, hey mate, you into stand-up comedy? And he just looks me in the eye. He goes, no, I fucking hate laughing, and kept walking. And I was like, sick. This is fucking awesome. So, first lap up, almost got no luck, right? I possibly handed out maybe 4 flyers on that first lap. So I was like, all right, let's mix up the strategy. And I started popping into businesses, right? Cafes, pizza shops, barber shops, couple of tattoo shops up there. And bottle-os seemed to be the big one for me. Every bottle-o I went to, they're like, yeah, just leave a couple on the counter there. So I think there was only 2 businesses on all of Caxton Street. I didn't pop into all of them, obviously. There's fucking millions of them. But where I thought our target audience might be visiting, I popped in there. I'm like, hey, can I leave a couple of these there? There was only 2 that knocked me back. Didn't quite fit their vibe or whatever the fuck they said. So, yeah, I had old mate. And then I was on my next lap down Caxton Street, past a kebab shop. And there were just 2 big Islander tradies sitting there smashing kebabs. And I'm like, they're my fucking people. This is my target audience. I've got this shit. So I cruise up awkwardly because, again, if there's one thing worse than handing a random walking past a flyer, it's handing people trying to enjoy a lunch a flyer. So I've gone up. I'm like, hey, boys, how you going? Luckily enough, they've put their kebabs down. They've gone, yeah, good, mate. How are you? And I'm like, yeah, good. I'm like, you guys wouldn't be interested in a bit of stand-up comedy next week, would you? And then I'm met with, yeah, fucking oath. We love comedy, blah, blah, blah. And then we start like a generic 20-second engage. Let's call it that, right? Where he's going, oh, yeah, I forget who he's, I think he said like something like, I like Bill Burr. And then the other dude's like, oh, yeah, he's a funny cunt, blah, blah, blah. Then he proceeds to pull his phone out and he goes, oh, what's your YouTube? He's like, I'll look at your YouTube. We'll watch your YouTube for the rest of lunch. And then if we like it, we'll buy a ticket. And I'm like, oh, I'm not on YouTube. I don't have any of my comedy on YouTube. I should have plugged the podcast. That would have been dickhead. I'm going to go there again today and see if they were there. But he goes, "What do you mean you're not on YouTube?" And I'm like, I just don't really have enough material yet to post all my shit on YouTube, because if I post it on YouTube and then someone comes to the show and I'm doing the same gear, they're going to be like, "We fucking watch this on YouTube, you dumb fuck." So, but again, at the start of this year, I said that's something that I want to start doing, and the year's not out. So, bit of inside baseball, because you guys love that. I'm planning on recording my set at Goodchat, and hopefully it goes fucking well. If not, no one will ever see it. But I reckon that's probably going to be my my resting place for a couple of my jokes. I reckon they're good and done. Get them on camera, post them on social media, and then fucking they'll never see the light of day again. Until I'm eating a massive bag of dicks on stage and I go, fuck, what else have I got in my back pocket? So, yeah, that's where that's all at. But Jesus, I hope some people fucking come to the show from all that legwork. It was insane. Oh, the lights have shut out. I should probably get up and turn them back on. Bear with me. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I think it's because, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the kids or the dog that have run through the studio over the weekend. The camera was out of place. The lights are out of place. And when I turned the lights back on, they're on a different setting. And I think they use too much of the power in this room if they're on that high setting. So I think I've just set them up how they should be. But we'll see how we fucking go, eh? What else has happened this week? I was cruising back from a gig on the other night, insert random night of the week. And I've given my lovely wife Nikita a call. I go, "Hey, I'm pretty hungry. Are you hungry?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm fucking starving." And I go, "How about this for a little treat? How about I pull up and get a bit of Hungry Jacks on my drive home at 9:30 at night? Because what's better than going to bed on a full stomach of Hungry Jacks?" And she goes, "That sounds tremendous. I will see you soon." So I've proceeded to pull into my local Hungry Jacks. And it's 9:30 at night. There's not many people there. It's a weeknight, right? And, well, when I say there's not many people there, the only people there were the people working inside Hungry Jack's, right? And then it was just my lonely car. So I've pulled through the drive-thru. I've placed my order at the speaker box. Then I go to the next window. I pay. Next window. She gives me my drinks and she goes, "Oh, can you just go down to the last window and we'll bring your food down there?" And again, I think we've spoken about it on the podcast before, but I don't understand why I can't just sit at that window, right? It saves everyone time. It saves me pulling down there for no reason. There's no one behind me. And it saves you guys walking the extra 10 steps to the next window. You can just pass it straight through to me. Everyone's happy. But I go, sure, okay, let's go. So I drive down and I'm sitting there, still no one behind me and still nobody entering the beginning of the drive-thru. I can see that from where I'm parked. And the lady comes to me 5 minutes later and she goes, "I think this is your order, but can I just double check what you've ordered?" And I've gone, "But no one else has ordered, so it has to be my order." And she goes, "Oh, well, I just got to double check before I give you your food in case it's the wrong order." And I'm like, told her my order, and she's like, she looks in the bag and she goes, "Yeah, okay, this is your order." I'm like, "Bitch, there's no one here. There is no one else here other than me. So unless you're ordering food while you're on the clock, which I'm sure you don't want me to tell your fucking manager about, it's my fucking food. So give it to me. Let me go home and just absorb my bomb that I just had via a Whopper with cheese with onion rings instead of fries and a large Coke." Pretty fucking good order if you ask me. Did anyone used to smash the ultimate, what were they? Ultimate double Whoppers back in the day? I don't even know if they still exist, but I used to smash them when I was an apprentice. They were the dirtiest burger in the fucking world. But just thinking about that makes me feel disgusting on my insides. But yeah, today is my first day of aiming to do a bit of clean eating, right? So that's the next thing I want to try and get on top of all the walking and sauna and ice bath and shit, is just a bit of clean eating, because that's where that's my big downfall, right? Because I'm a fiend for takeaway. Any takeaway, I'll smash it. And the other bad thing is, I don't know if any parents listening suffer from this condition, but if you've got kids that have lunchbox snacks and shit like that, and I understand that there's some parents out there that and like Nikita does this as well. She'll chop up like carrot sticks and apples and fucking whatever else fruit. Like my kids love fruit, but they also love like Oreos and Pringles and fucking Doritos and shit. And I'm like, oh, come to daddy. All of that get inside my stomach. And yeah, it's a bad thing to get into. And like this is the other side of the coin, right? My mum is a fiend for Costco. So every time we get to the bottom of all the junk food, I'm like, oh, I'm going to start a clean eating week next week. And then mum comes around with like half of Costco and we just fill up the pantry again. I'm like, oh, thank you. But now I'm morbidly obese. But there's fucking so much junk in the pantry today, but I'm just trying that whole discipline lane. So I know it's there. I'm just not going to fucking eat it because I'm Jocko Willink. I am Jocko Willink this week. And fucking we'll see how we go because yeah, I started to lose the weight again a little bit and now I'm back to where I started again. So yeah, life is a roller coaster, as Ronan Keating says. What else has happened this week? This is probably the last little interesting story of my week. I know that jumped around all over the shop. I don't know where the fuck I'm at. But this made me giggle this week. And Nikita goes, you can't say that on the podcast. And I'm like, please, I need content. My life is content. And she goes, all right, well, you can say it, but don't say what I said it about. And she's not here, so let's go nuts. So I mentioned a little while ago that Nikita's got into the world of headphones all of a sudden, right? Now, she understands where I've come from for the last, 15 years or whatever, that I've just walked around all day, every day with headphones in, listening to music, podcasts, audiobooks, the works, right? Keeps that head noise quiet, keeps your brain relaxed, right? At least it does for me. Helps me not think about shit so much. So Nikita's stumbled across this in the last 6 months or so, and up until now, she's pounded music. She's had a dabble in podcasts, but it's not really her format or platform. And that's the other thing. I'm like, there's millions of podcasts out there. Just find the one that's right for you. And she's like, oh, nah, not my thing. And a little while ago, maybe 8 years ago or so, she got into books a little bit. And she really enjoyed it, but she hates fucking reading. So it's one of those shitty things. She enjoyed the story, but she hated the reading process. And now she's seen me listen to audiobooks and stuff like that. And I just thought she realized oh, okay, the audiobook is just the book, right? And the author or a paid voice actor has read the book out loud, and now you don't have to read the words. You just consume the book through your ears. Easy. It's a simple fucking simple format to get your head around, right? But in Nikita's head, she didn't think it was like this because we were driving on the weekend. She goes, I think I'm going to get into audiobooks. And I'm like, oh, I think that'd be a fucking great idea for you. And like most women, this is the part she didn't want me to tell you about, but it's fucking normal. Every woman I know has read one of these books at some stage. So the whole romance novel type shit that dabbles in sexy scenes, right? Like 50 Shades of Grey and shit like that. So she wants to read books like that. And she goes, I just don't think I could listen to a sexy book in the voice of an audiobook. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, I just don't think that I could listen to a robot be like, and then I started to unbutton her shirt and take it off and caress her nipples. And I'm like, what are you talking about right now? And she goes, the robot voice, that you hear when you read an audiobook. And I'm like, have you listened to an audiobook from when you, since you were a kid, when you used to put the CD in your CD player and read along to kids' books where it was exactly like that? And then in her sexy novels, it would be and then he proceeded to pull down her panties and touch her private parts. Ding, 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 ding. Turn the page to page 319. That's not fucking audiobooks these days. It's a normal chick talking in a normal voice, or a dude. I I've never listened to a sexy novel, but that's what I'd assume. And it just blew my fucking mind that she thought that's what I listen to. Like I'm listening to David Goggins. Oh no, the dog's here. She's going to knock the camera. She thinks I'm listening to David Goggins be spoken by like a robot and just getting like motivation from that. Blew my mind. If there is anyone listening that still thinks that's how audiobooks are, but prepare to get your mind blown. Download Audible and scroll through the library and fill your day with joy. But I've realised this in the back of my head, but I will address the situation. I've sniffled a couple of times in the mic, and I'm sorry about that. I think I'm coming down with a little cold or something at the moment, but we're just going to push forward. And if I sniffle a couple of times, it is what it is. Now, we will rip through my week in comedy because a big event happened yesterday, and I think I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on it, right? So, week in comedy. I know last week I was coming off a bit of a heavy week of comedy, right? A couple of bombs in some regional scenes, and I was pretty down on it. Like I said, got a lot of word from people in the scene that my shit was going to destroy in regional scenes, and I thought the same, right? Then I proceeded to go and eat 2 heavy dicks, and and again, everybody says this, but everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? Now, I mentioned that I just dabbled in that little skill of subtly not giving a fuck about the crowd's reaction and things like that, and ditching your material and just playing into shit in the room, right? So I had a gig on Wednesday night at Currumbin Brewing. First time I've done that. It's awesome venue, right? Sick little brewery there at Currumbin. And I go to the bar at the start, and the dude obviously saw me talking to the other comedians. I'm like, just a water, thanks. He's like, oh, you sober or something? You don't drink? And I'm like, oh, no, I drink every now and then. He's like, oh, try one of my beers. And I'm like, oh, nah, it's all good, mate. Like I mentioned the other week when Matt was here, I don't exactly enjoy drinking anymore. So that was number one. And B, it gets expensive if you're buying a beer every night that you're out doing comedy. And this bloke goes, nah, it's on me. I just want you to try my beer. And I'm like, all right. Let's give it a sip. I go, what's your most basic beer here? I'm like, I'm a pretty basic bitch. So he gives me their like regular lager on tap. Shit was fucking mint. And he goes, yeah, if you want like however many beers you want before you go home, just come see me and I'll give them to you. I'm like, that is fucking awesome. So hats off to Currumbin Brewing. Go check them out. But yeah, I got up. The MC was struggling to get them started. It wasn't a tiny crowd. There was maybe 20 people there, right? So not big, not tiny, just in the middle there. And MC was struggling a tiny bit, and then the first act got up. And this dude's one of my favorites. I'm not gonna air him out, but he got up there and some of his material wasn't working. Same deal. He just played into the room and just acknowledged how shit he was doing and just almost broke that tension of the room a little bit, but it was still not great, right? So then I got up, did my set, and again, I did my first joke and it didn't flop. It was just like a steady giggle. And I'm like, all right, let's try what I tried in the regional scenes, right? And just started fucking around with shit in the room, then trying to bounce back into my gear, and then just fucking around with that. And it turned out to be a pretty fucking sick gig. So I was stoked with my set down there. What did I have the next night? Next night was last night on Earth down at Southport. Again, relatively, but this room's a hard one, right? Because it's a very, very small room. So even if you've got 10 to 12 people in there, which I reckon that's probably what we had on Thursday night, it's not a great deal of people to try and build some momentum behind you. And I had to go first that night. And luckily enough, again, had a fucking cracker set purely based on the whole thing of ditching my material and just playing into people in the room. And they were a rowdy, rambunctious type of crowd, right? So they were yelling shit out all between my material that I'm trying to build momentum with. So I knew the only way to like crack them was just to talk to them and get them involved. And I got a couple of bits about like social anxiety and confidence and shit like that. And there was a bit on stage. I've never done this before as well, but fuck, it was fun. But I got to my bit about confidence and someone said something and I just sort of like obviously I didn't genuinely snap, but I like snapped on stage and I started almost like yelling at the crowd, like this, not the crowd, just this one person that was yelling shit out. And fuck me, the rest of the audience was pissing their pants. And I was like, okay, like that was fun, but I also don't want to be one of those like character comedians that like Dave Hughes back in the day when he just used to be the grumpy guy on TV. Like I don't want to get into that lane too much. So again, it was a fun little tool to put in my back pocket that I might break out again at some stage. But yeah, so sick gig there. We're 2 from 2 this week, which I was stoked with. Then Friday night, yeah, Matic Brewing at Ashmore. Again, I've spoken about this gig multiple times. I've only had like 1 to 2 bad gigs there, right? And even like saying that they're bad gigs, it just wasn't a crush because normally that room, it's a pretty padded room if you want to put it that way. Like you can get away with a lot of shit there. And stupid dickhead here was like, nah, I'm not going to take my tripod up tonight. I don't feel like recording. Jesus Christ, am I a dickhead? I got up there and had one of let's call it my best set of my year I had on Friday night at Matic. I was super, and again, I don't know if this is because it was like night after night of comedy, so I just felt like fine-tuned, like I was in the zone sort of thing. But I just like let loose. Like I was the loosest I'd ever felt. I was just playing into the room. And just the crowd was just frothing for everything I had to say. Like the amount of crowd work I did that night was the most I've ever done. And I got to like my third last joke and I've looked at my watch, which I've got like a little stopwatch playing while I'm on stage. And I was booked for a 10-minute set, but I looked down, I was already at 11 minutes. So I was like, oh fuck, like I can't do my last 2 jokes. So I just had to, luckily, like my last little bit of crowd work got a good laugh and I'm like, fucking, let's wrap it there. So that was sick. That was that was unreal. And God, it's like one of those things where it's like, you have to take your tripod, dickhead. Like stop being a fucking self-conscious little dick and take it up there and record. And again, if I had got that on recording, I would have posted so many of the bits, but is what it is. Again, I can't even explain what happened in the room because it's just not going to come across as good. But I ran that bit that like Ash gifted me, but I'm like now that where I've got it on stage, it's not like it's hard to say it's a completely different joke because the premise is still there, but it's definitely nothing like what Ash worded the first time. It's completely different to like what I sent him the first time I did it as well. So it got a huge laugh, like legit 10 seconds of just laughter that I had to stand there and just soak it in. And when the laughter finished, a dude in the front row got up and walked out to the toilet and I just had to play into it. And I'm like, fucking going out to look for my jizz rag, are you? And then the crowd just lost it again. And I played the recording because I audio recorded it. And Nikita goes, oh, let me listen to it. And even she was laughing along in bed as I was playing it. And she goes, oh, and again, I don't want to be like the prop comedian, but she's like, why don't you like put a scrunched up ball of toilet paper in your pocket? And when you finish the joke, like throw it at someone at in the front row. And I'm like, fuck, that's a pretty funny idea. Like just imagine sitting there hearing that joke and then just copping a scrunched up ball of toilet paper to the forehead that you are scared is going to be covered in fucking jizz. So I don't know, maybe I'll dabble in that. I mean, you can only try it and see if it works, right? And then I ran the evolution joke. Never had this one before. I had 3 ones that I'd never had this week. So Friday night was probably the weirdest. I go, anyone into conspiracies? And this dude goes, space isn't real. And I go, what the fuck did you just say? And he goes, space isn't real. or when you look up there, it's not real. And I go, what is it then? And he goes, it's going to take me too long to explain. And I go, okay, I'll come and have a chat to you after the show and you might be able to turn me. But yeah, then I played into it a little bit more, but then cracked onto my joke and fucking... It was a sick night. I told you it wouldn't come across as fucking good in person as it did in the room. So come watch me do comedy. Come on Tuesday night to Goodchat Comedy Fringe Festival. There is a handful of tickets left. Love to sell that motherfucker out. And then the last one for the night, or for the week, sorry, not the night, was Hoda, the big one down the Gold Coast. So, yeah, that was another one similar to Friday night. Again, I just felt fine-tuned, in the zone, just dipping in and out of material a little bit. Yeah, not much to go into that one, but again, another sick gig. Easily second best gig of the week after Matic. But it was pretty funny, a moment before, literally behind the curtains with the MC, right? The MC was, I'll just say his name, Chris Martin, who runs Big Fork Theatre up in the city. So he was MC on that night, and I've always had like a pretty good relationship with him, right? He was the first person in the scene to come and like sort of laugh at the dog bit that I put together and said it's one of the best sort of well-written jokes that I've heard in the scene for a couple of years. And I'm like, thank you so much, sir. So we're standing behind the stage. The first act is on, doing their thing, and we're whispering to each other. And we started talking about how he's thinking about moving. He goes, where do you live anyway? I'm like, oh, Logan in the ghetto. He's like, oh, really? He's like, oh, well, like Logan's got a stigma, but at least you've like not had any major issues or anything. I go, oh, I had an armed home invasion. And he goes, what? And like, this is all happening a minute before we have to go on stage. And he goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't have time to tell you the full story. I go, basically, 3 dudes dressed up as cops came inside, looked for 25 grand's worth of cash and drugs, held me and my wife to the floor with guns to our heads, and fucking ended up realizing we weren't the right people. They left. And then the other dude, he goes, Jesus Christ, why haven't you like written a bit about that? I'm like, I'm trying. Like, what about that is funny, but I am fucking trying. And then as I said that, the guy on stage goes, all right, thank you very much. And this dude had to go out on stage just in the back of his head with this story that I've just blown his mind with. And I was like, that's fucking, it was so funny. And then obviously I've had to like try and zen myself, get out of my little fucked up story phase of a traumatic time and go out there and make some people laugh. So luckily I did. And yeah, it was sick. So a sick week of stand-up comedy this week. Oh, where are we at? Should be about halfway. Oh, look at that. Bang on. We're at the 33-minute mark, but by the time I chop out all that lighting situation we had, we'll probably be right on half time. So a couple of news articles or whatever the fuck you want to call it from this week, along with some cool things that I've watched. What is going on here? Why is my mouse not working? There we go. That's a bit better. And I just had a fucking missed call as well. Who's that from? That's okay. We can talk to them after, unless you guys want to talk to them on the podcast. But I was supposed to talk about this last week, right? And for whatever reason, it got deleted off my run sheet. And I don't know why, but Linkin Park announced a new lead singer, Emily Armstrong, which is obviously in the name. It's a female lead singer. Obviously, their last lead singer was Chester Bennington, which I spoke about. He was like one of my motivational clips probably like 4 weeks ago now. But yeah, everyone knows him. Everyone knows Linkin Park. Everyone knows Chester. And it was sort of at the point, I think he passed away, let's put it that way, about seven or 8 years ago now. So it's been a long time since Linkin Park's technically had like a lead singer. And a lot of people, I was probably one of the people as well, admittedly, that I just thought they would never really going to get another full-time lead singer. They had a couple of people jump in and like not trial, I guess, but do a couple of covers and things like that with them. And there was one chick that, and this is fucking, I spoke to Ash about this. He thought I was lying. And again, I didn't know who the fuck she was until the cover came up on my TikTok algorithm about a year ago now. Bonnie Fraser from a band called Stand Atlantic. I thought she would have been an awesome fit just based on that little cover that she did with the band last year. And I was like, I could actually listen to their music again if she was the lead singer. Not that I don't really listen to their music, and like I still do listen to their music every now and then, but I don't know. I don't know how to fucking explain that. Anyway, last week or the week before now, they announced Emily as the lead singer, and they copped a heap of backlash from it. And again, I listened to the single that they announced, and I wasn't entirely keen on it to start with. And I think that's just because I was in that like petty mindset of no one can replace Chester. This is fucking so wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I know there's a whole heap of other reasons that some other people don't like her, but I'm not going to dig into that. It is what it is, whatever. But I don't know. Over the last couple of weeks, I've played that song more than a few times. It is easily my most played song over the last 2 weeks. So it's called The Emptiness Machine. And it has grown on me. And a lot of people have sort of said she's not like ever going to replace Chester and like the way that he used to sing the songs, but it's like a cool little new path for Linkin Park to like still exist and bring out new music and things like that. So I'm actually pretty like I like her voice now. It's grown on me. I like her singing the old songs, like the live versions that I've seen of that. So again, it was one of those things where I think I'm just super quick to jump on shutting things down at the start, and then they like grow on me, like Rogan's special and things like that. But go give it a listen. The Emptiness Machine, Linkin Park. It's their most streamed song on Spotify now, which is insane. I think last check I had it was like 58 million streams, which is nuts that it came out like 2 weeks ago. Again, don't fact check me. I'm not here to present facts. But couple of things that caught my eye this week in the podcasting / comedy world. So everyone knows I like Bert Kreischer. I listen to his podcast every week, the Bertcast. And this week was a cool one. He had Charlie Day on, who's like an American actor. If you saw his face, you'd know exactly who the fuck he is, right? But yeah, he's a funny dude. And if you don't listen to the whole podcast because you don't like Bert Kreischer or whatever, just go to the last half an hour. And I didn't know Charlie Day really dabbled in this, right? But he plays guitar a little bit and just makes up funny little songs. So Bert Kreischer was literally just throwing names out to him of other celebrities that he's done movies with or he's friends with. And he'd just make up these funny little, like, quick songs about him, right? Funny as shit. I was laughing so hard at the last half an hour. But, yeah, go check that out. Hilarious. And just so talented to see people come up with music on the fly like that. Like, I think I'm not going to jump ahead of myself, but there's a comedian I have booked as a guest next week that does a similar thing with like raps and things like that. So fingers crossed that follows through. He's in Brisbane next week for a couple of shows and things like that. So if planets align, we'll have another guest next week. But again, I'm going to talk to you guys about that at the end of the episode. The other thing that I saw this week, which I've seen before, but I just it popped up in my YouTube algorithm and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to watch that again. So Chris Distefano is one of my, I don't know, I don't want to say he's one of my favorite newer comedians. No, fuck it. Technically he is. I love everything that he does. His podcast is hilarious. Yeah, go listen to that podcast. I think it's, what is that even called? It's like Chrissy D. Yeah, I don't know. Just search Chris Distefano and it'll come up. But basically, every comedian will tell you it just takes one moment to blow you the fuck up, right? Like Bert Kreischer with The Machine, fucking Jimmy, what's his name? Jim Jeffries. Why the fuck did I blank on that? Jim Jeffries getting punched at the Comedy Store. So it just takes one moment to be captured on film and blow you up. Chris Distefano went on stage one night in New York and told a story about 9/11, right? While he was a little bit tipsy, and this thing blew the fuck up and gave him a career, right? It's the funniest fucking thing. about 9/11 that you'll ever hear. So go give it a listen. Just literally search on YouTube Chris Distefano 9/11, and yeah, just prepare yourself for 12 minutes of just someone fucking around with a joke and just making it work. And yeah, I've heard interviews with him before where he's said that that's the first time he's sort of tried that on stage, and a lot of parts of the joke do sort of resemble that, but the way that he is and the way he tells stories and just he's like Italian New York heritage just coming out in that story, funny as fuck. Yeah, obviously other than the whole 9/11 thing happening, but again, it's one of those things where he's taken such a serious hectic story and just made a joke about it, and that's definitely what I'm trying to do with a couple of these stories that I throw around. So let's rip into the big one. This is easily going to take up the rest of the episode, I'd imagine. But yesterday, UFC 306 was on, right? And I don't think I saw anyone refer to it as UFC 306, which the whole time the UFC's been around, it's always been UFC followed by the number of what pay-per-view it is, right? But everyone was referring this one as Noche UFC. Again, I don't know how to fucking pronounce it. But it was basically Dana White was calling it his love letter to Mexico, right? And this is going to be my love letter to Dana White, just quietly. But it was basically held in the Sphere in Las Vegas. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a giant ball that is kitted out with the most LED screens in the world. One of the biggest sound systems in the world that is hidden by all the LED screens. And they can more or less turn the outside and the inside of this building into whatever you want, right? It can display whatever picture, video, everything. And there's even, I forget the exact number, but there's like 100 seats or something in the venue. It could even be more than that. But they basically like shake with the noise and blow air and all that sort of shit, which it'd be crazy to like trip to in there. And Dana White came out and said he wants to be the first person to put a sporting event on there. Again, like everything that Dana White says, a lot of people were jumping down his throat going, it's not possible. You can't do it. And yeah, yesterday he proved everyone wrong and pulled off not only what is easily the best sporting event I've ever seen, it's probably the best, just hands down thing I had ever seen in my life, right? The best thing I've ever witnessed on television for sure. But yeah, I think, and this should have been before yesterday, but I think when you talk about, like everyone talks about people of our generation, like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and all that sort of shit, right? But like in my world, Dana White is up there as one of the craziest motherfuckers that just speaks this shit into existence. Like 20 years ago or whatever, if you said that one of the biggest sports in the world at the moment, like in the future, sorry, is going to be people getting locked in a steel cage, beating the fuck out of each other, and like millions upon millions of people are going to pay to watch it, you'd be called a fucking liar. Like there was times where it was like put beside the porn at video shops, at Blockbuster and shit like that, because it was so frowned upon. Like there was a point where like my mum didn't want me to watch it and shit because it was too violent. But that's another thing that's been proven over this period of time now. It's one of the safest martial arts sports that you can do. Like I'm not going to voice statistics because I don't have updated statistics, but yeah, there's definitely been a lot more deaths and serious injuries in other sports other than MMA. But I think we'll just start my whole UFC rant with a couple of videos of what exactly the Sphere looked like inside. And again, I'm sorry for my audio listeners, but not only do I want the people on YouTube to see this, but I also want to half relive it myself. So just let me drag these over. Where are we? There's one. So I've got three 3 short videos. So just hang in there. One more to drag over, ladies and gentlemen. All right, there we go. So let's play this one. So this was another, I think this might have been a little sort of, not a prank from Dana, but just almost a little shout out to the haters, because it basically started out with it was just basically like a red backdrop with just a heap of like steel scaffolding type of thing. Like you'd see like lighting rigs and things like that. And I'll admit when I first turned it on, I was like, oh fuck, he's hired out the whole sphere. He's spent $20 million on putting this event on, and this is what he's done. And as I'm watching it and I'm watching the first few fighters walk out, I'm like, it's actually kind of cool. Like, I don't mind it. It's so simple, but still so cool that he's done that. And obviously he doesn't want to overshadow the fighters. He wants them to be the showcase, things like that. And I've jumped on social media. Everyone is hating on him straight away, going, you fucking spent $20 million on this. You hired out the sphere and this is all you can come up with. You might as well have just held it at the UFC Apex, blah, blah, blah. And then I 100% think Dana wanted that bite from the audience. He wanted them to think that he's fucked up this whole thing. And then every 2 fights, the sphere would transform into an entirely different thing, right? So through the prelims, it was cool as fuck, but it was still relatively simple. Then the pay-per-view happened, right? And now this is the type of shit that we were witnessing. So I think this was the first one we saw. Fucking nuts, right? So that actually wasn't the first one. That was the backdrop for the co-main event. So I think this might have been the first one, actually.
We are immortal. With traditions that transcend time, our spirits transcend death. This is our living legacy. We are all keepers of this flame. For generations of Mexicans, reunited by the eternal light, marigolds illuminate the way. From the heavens to the earth.
Insane, right? Like, imagine being there. And then this was right before the main event, this one here.
Ours to carry. Guiding us to uncharted territory. We are Mexico's eternal warriors. We will never stop fighting for the future of our people and for the fate of our nation. For Mexico. For all time.
Insane, right? Fucking nuts. Like so basically in the main event before every fight, there was like like Dana White was calling them a film, right? And he hired I'd never seen after a UFC main event, the credit roll that was after that once the broadcast had finished. Like the amount of money that he said he paid for award-winning directors, producers, all that. He's like, if we put together a list of how many Grammys, Emmys, Oscars, fucking everything that the people I've got working on this have won, it'd be the biggest like production of all time, right? And it's like, it's nuts for Dana to just put his balls on the line and pull this entire thing off, right? And again, to pull off something as sophisticated as that and have zero issues other than one little thing that we'll touch on at the end of the recap, it's fucking, yeah, it's insane. Hats off to him. He's legit one of the greatest fucking businessmen of our generation. So let's touch on a couple of the fights. This fight blew my mind away, right? This was in the prelims. Irene Aldana split her head open from the very top of her forehead, down her face, over her nose, and to her top lip. And it looked bad in the fight. She was drenched in blood. She was red. And this happened at like the end of the first round due to an accidental headbutt. Obviously, then she's fought another 2 rounds because the fight went to decision. And she just was not backing out of this fight, right? She was losing the whole fight, but she was just not going to fucking give up, which hats off to her, full credit. But fuck me, the cut at the end of the fight is the most insane thing I've ever seen. And it's also gone down as the biggest cut in UFC history. Her face was split in half. And then they showed a picture of her after she got stitched up and shit. Legit fucking Chucky. You guys know Chucky, the doll, the scary doll? He had less stitches in his face than she had. Fucking blew my mind. But yeah, absolute weapon. She lost to Norma Dumont, which I don't want to brag or anything, but I had her in my little betting multi yesterday, so it was good for me. Rodriguez versus Osborne. So I missed the weigh-ins for this, right? Which I shouldn't have done. It's fucking sucked. I wanted to watch every little bit about this event, and I missed them. So I didn't really see the size difference between Rodriguez and Osborne until they were in the cage together. And I was like, oh shit, I've made a big mistake here. So I had Rodriguez to win. I think he was the favorite. So I think I made it a little bit juicier by having him by knockout. I think I had him, but that went to decision as well. A lot of that was the other insane thing. Normally when you buy a UFC pay-per-view and so many of the fights go to decision, you're like, this is shit. I want to see a knockout or a submission. But with the amount of decisions we had yesterday, I was stoked that I was like, oh, that means this event's going to go even longer and I'm going to get to see this whole thing. Like, it did not feel like your typical UFC card where sometimes in between fights things drag on and stuff, but this was just, there was always something fucking happening. Blew my mind. But yeah, Rodriguez ground out a decision, so I didn't win my bet, but is what it is. This one was insane, right? Zellhuber versus Ribovics. Ribovics, or I think it might be Ribovich, maybe. He got through into the UFC via Dana White's Contender Series. So I was like, hey, why not put a little dabble on the young gun, right? And fuck me, am I glad I did. He was the underdog in the fight. This fight, if you're not into the whole Sphere thing, if you don't want to watch the whole UFC card, just go and watch this one fight. It is the most insane back and forth stand-up fight I've seen in a long time, right? And obviously I've spoken on here before about a few couple, like if I'm like, oh, it was an insane fight, it's normally very one-sided, but this fight was legit. You got to the end of the fight and you're like, I don't know who the fuck won that. Like, I obviously, because I had money on him, I was like, I hope he gets it. And yeah, he did end up getting it, but Jesus. And the last round was just nuts that all they wanted to do was just bang on with each other. Like, they didn't give a fuck. And typical when they get that 10-second clap at the end of the third round, just flying fists everywhere, just going nuts. So they got fight of the night, obviously. There was no other option other than that. Not saying all the other fights were insane, but that fight was just, it was up there. It was nuts. Now for the sad one, right? Ortega versus Lopez. This fight made me so fucking sad. So the whole lead up to this card, everyone was like, Brian Ortega does not look himself. He was pudgy. He didn't seem sort of overly happy and stuff. And even in saying that, Brian Ortega isn't necessarily the most happy bouncing around guy you'll ever see, but he does have glimpses of like funny moments and stuff, right? But he just looked miserable. He didn't look like he wanted to be there. And then he got in the cage and I don't know how he didn't get finished in the first round. Yeah, a couple of scary moments there for him. But again, ground out to the decision. easily lost. No one can argue that Lopez got the win there. Catapulted himself up to number 3 in the rankings. And, fucking hats off to Lopez, young lion there, who's going to kill the game eventually. Grasso versus Shevchenko for the co-main. Everyone thought Grasso was going to win, and I don't know if this is because I like the older names. I just felt Shevchenko was going to get it done. And sure enough, she did. Again, I had her by knockout, but she won via decision. So she's got her title back after 2 losses to Grasso. So now it's like, okay, Grasso's beaten her twice, and now she's got her title back. Do they have a 4th fight? Like, often fights finish with a trilogy, and it just seems to make sense. But now it's like, oh, okay, no one expected it to pan out this way. Do we schedule the 4th one? So we'll see what they do there. No one knows what's going to happen there. But then the main event, O'Malley versus Merab. I said it last week. If you bet with your heart, you go with O'Malley. If you bet with your head, you go Merab. And, I went with Merab via knockout or submission. Unfortunately, I went to decision, which was the obvious fucking one. Like, all of Merab's fights go to decision. He has that, like, Khabib style or the Bilal Muhammad style where they just maul you the whole time. Like, no matter what you do, they're there. They're on top of you. They're in your face, and they just grind out the decision. And that's exactly what he fucking did yesterday. He didn't give Sugar enough time to find his range, get some big hits in. Sugar came back in the 5th round, but obviously, as we all know, you can't be down 4 rounds to 1 and expect to keep your title. So Sugar was pretty down on himself. He left the cage. It was probably the first time I've seen in years that a loser of a main event has not stuck around and given a post-fight speech with Rogan. So I don't know if he was just a sore loser and was in his own head, but he actually tweeted this morning and just sort of, I think he accepted that it happened, and he goes, what did he say? Overpromised, underdelivered. Sorry, guys, I'll be back, or something like that. So, yeah, hats off to him. There's a bit of a funny banter from Henry Cejudo, who used to be the champion of that division. He goes, Sean O'Malley, you always wanted to be the next Conor McGregor, and now you officially are. You're a washed-up cokehead who doesn't know how to wrestle. So I'm putting on a wrestling clinic at my gym tomorrow at 8 a.m. See you both there. So fucking while the man's down, he's just getting kicked again. So, there was actually a crazy start to that fight, and the commentators were touching on this a fair bit, but the fight kicked off, and the first 30 seconds, Merab was yelling at Sugar's corner, and Tim Walsh, who's Sugar's coach, was yelling out directions to Merab, and apparently he did this in his fight against Aljamain Sterling. So apparently he's got a bit of a reputation for doing this. I hadn't seen it before, but he does it. And then the ref, because of all the grappling and shit, there wasn't a great deal of action. Like, the action was the grappling, which I know a lot of people are against. They're like, no, fucking, if you're not punching or kicking, then the fight should be stood up, blah, blah, blah. But in saying that, the other person should be skilled enough to be able to get out of those positions and get back to their feet. So regardless of if it's boring or not, the dude's winning the fight. So people are of two minds of that. But I think Daniel Cormier said this, and it fucking cracked me up when he said it. He's like, if this was in the 4th round or something, after it was admittedly a bit boring, and he's like, so all we can put this main event down to is excessive coaching and kissing, because at the end of the 2nd round, Merab kissed Sugar on the head, and Sugar just got up and started swinging in between the 2 rounds. It was a pretty crazy thing to see, but is what it is, you know what I mean? We're running overtime, but whatever. What can you do, right? It's going to be a little over the hour this week. So that was UFC 306 all wrapped up. Amazing card. I fucking loved it. The other big news that came during this whole fight week, Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler officially off. It's not happening. Michael Chandler doesn't want to stick around and wait for Conor anymore. He said, I've gone 2 years or something now without a fight. I need to make some fucking money. So he's scheduled a fight with Charles Oliveira. So it's going to be the 2nd time they've fought. And it's going to be a sick fight. So that's going to be the co-main. UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden in New York, right? So everyone's like, oh, that's a fucking huge fight. Who's the main event going to be? It's official. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic is going to be the main event, UFC 309. Just those two fights on their own, I'd want 309 to happen tomorrow. I'm still on a high from 306, but let's make 309 happen right now. So, insane. Conor McGregor's obviously come out and said it's not his fucking idea to do this and blah, blah, blah. But we'll see. We'll see what washes out in it. I'll do motivational clip of the week, and then we'll get into what else I got to touch on. Where's my fucking mouse? Now, this was just one that rung true this week. Again, Theo Von just seems to pop his head up every fucking week here, doesn't he? But this was a little chat that him and Brian Callen had on Theo's podcast a little while ago now, maybe a year or so ago. But it was just something Theo had to hear at that time, and it was just so sick to hear Callen tell him this.
Your job is important, and you're worth it. And I always tell you that when you get down on yourself, you're fucking important. You're important, my friend. The shit you do, it's so important to people. You know why? Because they laugh. And you know what happens when you laugh? You know what happens when Theo Von makes people laugh? They forget they're human. They forget they're broke. They forget they hate their job. They forget that their girlfriend's cheating on them. They forget that they were abused. They forget it all. Because when you make people laugh, people they forget that for a second, and they forget that they have to even sleep. I appreciate you crying over it, because it's important that you hear that. You are important.
So that was fucking sick just to see those two of my favorites having a chat, and Theo getting a bit emotional there. But that sort of leads us into the next thing. So fucking, I need some feedback from you guys. I don't know where the fuck you want me to take the podcast, right? So I've done 2 weeks of guests, and the numbers they're pretty much plateaued with my solo episodes, right? Which, super appreciative that you core group of members come back every week and fucking support the fuck out of this podcast. Love you guys for that. But doing not only 2 episodes a week is obviously double the amount of work for not really any payoff. And also just that headache again of trying to book people, trying to work out times, trying to work out clashing schedules and fucking delays and shit like that. So it's like, okay, that takes me back. That makes me rethink the whole guest format that I was leaning towards. So do I just stick to the solo podcast? Is that what you guys are enjoying the most? Because obviously guests, and I get doing it for 2 weeks isn't a good gauge to get it off right, but it's also enough to go, okay, well, it's not doing anything to the numbers, so is it worth all the time and effort? So I don't know. Feedback from anyone that's fucking listening right now. Let me know if you prefer the solo ones, if you prefer the guest ones, if you like. Even Nikita threw this idea around, right? Tell me again if you guys like this idea. Some people like the first half an hour of the episode where I say all the awkward shit of my week, and then I say my week of comedy, and then some people might shut off after that. That might be all they want to hear. They don't want to hear me talk about news shit or what I've watched or listened to this week, the motivational premise, blah, 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 the UFC chat. Some people aren't into that. So do you want me to do a 30 to 40 minute episode on a Tuesday with the first half of what the podcast normally is, and then another 30-minute episode on a Thursday or something? So you're still getting like the hour, but it's getting broken down and you can pick and choose what you want to listen to. I don't know. It's fucking all up in the air. So let me know what you guys want to hear, because obviously put a lot of time and effort into the podcast, and it's almost like, as much as I don't want to fucking stop doing it and shit, it's almost at the point of can it grow any further than where the fuck it's at? Because this is, what's this, episode 111 or something, and probably for the last 20 to 25 episodes, it's fucking pretty well plateaued, I would say. And yeah, it's fucking, I think doing it for this long, as long as I have with zero sponsors, zero money behind me, things like that. It's proven that I'm here for the long run. This is obviously something that I want to come and do all day, every day, hopefully eventually make some money from it. I heard a thing this morning, and I'm not going to throw any shade at this particular person, but we've obviously had our times in the past, but I heard them on another podcast this morning, and they were like, oh, we published our first podcast and we only got like 400 downloads. And I was like, is it all worth it? And I'm like, that fucking blew my mind out of the water to get 400 downloads and be so down about it. Like, and that made me think, if all these big podcasters and stuff, and there are big podcasts that have put their years in, like Hello Sport and Bloody Brilliant Beers and shit like that have come out and said, for our first 100 episodes or something, we're getting fuck all downloads. And then it just took one clip or something for them to blow the fuck up. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. But to hear someone say that's doing so well in the industry, I'm like, Jesus, like, could you imagine, like, I genuinely wonder if they were getting the amount of downloads I was getting a week, if they would still be doing it to this day. If they even really like podcasting and shit, or if they're just doing it for the financial and popularity gain. So again, I'm not going to name and shame. There's a couple of people listening that would have listened to that podcast, because I know they listen to that podcast as well and know exactly who the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, it is what it is. So I need to hear from you guys. I know I ask you guys, the dog's going to knock the camera. I know I ask you guys every week to fucking touch base and stuff, and a couple of you guys do, so appreciate that. But legit, I know there's a core number of you guys listening. Let me know what you want to hear. Let me know how you think we can grow this to that next little step, which is what I'm keen to do. But yeah, is what it is. Keen to hear from you guys. Let's touch on the shows this week. 17th of September, we've got my split bill show with Reed and Cody, Too Far at Goodchat Comedy Club. 19th of September, I'm emceeing down at a Prey Surf. Another sick little room that I've been talking about a lot on this podcast. September 22nd, the next show at Distillery Road Market. So we've got some big things bubbling in the pipeline for that venue. So yeah, line up for this week is insane. We've got Anissa Nandula as our MC, Reed Willoughby, who was on here a couple of weeks, supporting, Cody Grimsey, Josh Spyro is back there again, and headliner for the night. He's been on the pod before, and I fucking love this dude's comedy. So I was like, he will crush as the headliner at this gig. John Peacock. So come watch that show. It's free, 6 p.m, 22nd of September. Keen to see you guys there. And yeah, send any submissions, any feedback, anything you guys have got to let me know via DM on Instagram or cantgetanyworsepod@gmail.com. Appreciate you guys listening. I'm about to fucking piss my pants, and I will see you later.
Can't get any worse, we'll make you see. It's all